Long before he was called an apostle, he was simply the elder son of Zebedee, a fisherman with rough hands and a boat that smelled of salt and net rope. History remembers his younger brother John for the tenderness of his later years. But James came first. He was the firstborn, the one who likely hauled the heavier nets, the one his father counted on. It was an ordinary morning on the water when everything changed. A voice called from the shore, not a king's voice, not a priest's, but a carpenter's son from Nazareth. "Follow me," he said, "and I will make you fishers of men." James did not ask for proof. He did not ask for time. Scripture says he left the boat and left his father Zebedee standing in it and walked toward a life he could not yet imagine. Of the 12, only 3 were ever invited past the threshold of Christ's most private moments. James was one of them, alongside Peter and his own brother John. The first such moment came in the home of a synagogue leader named Jairus, whose daughter lay still and lifeless. The mourners outside had already given up hope. Their weeping turned to mockery when Jesus said the child was only sleeping. He put them all outside, all except Peter, James, John, and the child's parents. In that quiet room, away from the crowd's noise, James watched Jesus take a dead girl's hand and speak 2 words that emptied a house of grief. "Talitha koum," "Little girl, get up." It was the first time James saw death itself obey a command. It would not be the last extraordinary thing he was chosen to witness. Some months later, the same 3 were led up a mountain apart from the others. James likely expected another quiet moment of prayer. What he witnessed instead defied everything he understood about the man he had followed. Before his eyes, Jesus was transfigured, his face shining like the sun. His clothing turned dazzling white. And then, 2 figures appeared beside him. Moses, the giver of the law, and Elijah, the greatest of the prophets, speaking with him of what he was about to accomplish in Jerusalem. A cloud overshadowed the mountain, and a voice spoke from within it. "This is my beloved son. Listen to him." James fell face down, gripped by a fear he had no words for. He had followed a teacher. He had followed a healer. On that mountain, he came face to face with something far greater, and he was told, for now, to keep it to himself. Not every moment in James's story shows him at his best, and the honesty of that is part of what makes him worth remembering. As Jesus and the disciples journeyed toward Jerusalem for the final time, James and his brother approached him, in one account, through their own mother with a bold request, to sit one at his right hand and one at his left when he came into his glory. The other 10 disciples were indignant. Jesus was not angry, he was patient and direct. "You do not know what you are asking," he told them. "Can you drink the cup that I am about to drink?" James answered that he could. He had no idea yet what that cup would truly cost. Jesus used the moment to teach all 12 a lesson that would outlast every throne. That greatness in his kingdom is measured not by who is served, but by who serves. The same inner 3 who saw a dead girl rise, who saw glory on a mountain, were the same 3 Jesus brought deepest into the garden on the last night before his arrest. "My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death," he told them. "Stay here and keep watch with me." James, exhausted, did what every one of them did that night. He slept. 3 times Jesus returned to find them sleeping, and 3 times he let them rest a little longer, even as he alone faced the weight of what was coming. When the torches and soldiers finally came through the olive trees, James saw the promise he had made on the road to Jerusalem begin to take its true shape. The cup was no longer a question. It had arrived. The book of Acts passes over James's death in a single, startling verse. No lengthy trial, no extended account, just this: Herod the king laid violent hands on some who belonged to the church, and he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. It happened perhaps a decade after the resurrection, as the young church in Jerusalem was growing rapidly and its leaders were drawing dangerous attention. Herod Agrippa I, eager to please the religious authorities, moved against the apostles. James became the first of the 12 to die for what he had witnessed, the first martyr among men who had once argued over thrones, now proving with his life what Jesus had told them, that his cup would indeed be theirs to drink. Tradition adds a detail Scripture does not, that the man who accused him before Herod was so struck by James's courage in his final hour that he, too, declared himself a believer and was executed alongside him. Here, verified history gives way to a tradition treasured for centuries. Long before his death, legend holds that James traveled far beyond Judea, carrying the message of Christ to the western edge of the known world, to Hispania, the land the Romans called the end of the earth. The mission, tradition says, bore little visible fruit in his lifetime. He returned to Jerusalem and, soon after, was executed by Herod's sword. But the story does not end there. According to a tradition that took root in the early medieval church, his followers carried his body by boat across the sea, back to the shores he had once walked, to be laid to rest in the land he had tried to reach. It is legend, not scripture, but it is a legend that would shape a continent. Centuries later, a tomb believed to be his was discovered in a quiet field in northwestern Spain. A place that would take its name, Santiago de Compostela, from his own cathedral rose over the site. Around it grew something even greater, a path. The Camino de Santiago, the Way of St. James, became one of the most walked pilgrim routes in the history of the Christian world. Today, on any given morning, thousands of people from every corner of the globe still lace up their boots and walk that same road, some for faith, some for grief, some simply searching, following scallop shell markers toward the same cathedral square. James asked once for a seat beside a throne. He was given, instead, a road walked by strangers for 2,000 years, proof that the servant's path he was taught in that final journey to Jerusalem became the very legacy he is remembered for. The journey to his tomb was not the end of his story. It was a new beginning. Long after his death, James's name spread across the world. In churches and cathedrals across Europe, his image appeared with the pilgrim staff and scallop shell. His name traveled across countries, taking different forms: Iago, Diego, Jamie, Jacques, Giacomo, Santiago. Even today, on his feast day, people gather in processions and celebrations to remember him. Once, James asked for a place beside the throne. He never received the place he asked for. Instead, he became part of a story that outlived kings, kingdoms, and generations. A fisherman who once sought greatness became a servant whose faith would never be forgotten.